Hello, friends. I'm extremely happy to welcome you all to yet another insightful episode of Nothing But Truth. There has been a trend change in the sense earlier we used to see a lot of shoulder issue in the older age group, say maybe 50, 60 plus. But today, what we are seeing is even youngsters, say around 30, 35 years, itself have started having a lot of shoulder problem. It can be a frozen shoulder or a rotator cuff tear, lot of issue. Plus, lot of sports people they're finding it difficult in their sports career due to some other injury. To have a better understanding about this, today I'm extremely happy to welcome Dr. Ayyappan V Nair to our episode. Welcome, doctor.
Thank you so much, man.
A little intro about doctor. Dr. Ayyappan V Nair finished his MBBS from Kempegowda Institute of Medical Science, Bangalore, then went on to do his diploma in orthopedics, followed by DNB in orthopedics. With this, he got an interest in shoulder and sports injury, which he pursued by going to multiple fellowship abroad. He's gone to Korea, Australia, US, and many more places. So, doctor, would you like to tell me something more about your journey? What made you become a doctor? What inspired you to be an orthopedic surgeon?
Right. Uh, as a kid, I didn't initially want to be a doctor. I actually wanted to be a pilot. But then both my parents were doctors. My father is a general practitioner, and my mother is a gynecologist. So seeing them, definitely I was interested because we had a nursing home, mostly focusing on maternity, and I'd seen my parents working together for a long time. So I used to sometimes visit the hospital, spend some time with my parents there. I would see them see patients and how my father and mother, who were very compassionate doctors. So I would see that sometimes they won't even charge anything, or even today, I think they still practice. I think they charge very, very less. So I'm working in rural areas for almost like 30, 40 years. So that actually got me interested into medicine. And so after my plus two, then I got into medicine. And uh, I joined MBBS in KIMS Kempegowda Institute in Bangalore, where actually I met my wife, and that made a huge difference in my life. Uh, so after that, during that time, okay, I was during my final year MBBS. There was a time then when I thought that I want to get into orthopedics because orthopedics is supposed to be a very difficult field. Only the top people do get into orthopedics or rather do well in orthopedics. And so I liked whenever I used to go for hospital visitations, uh, especially the orthopedic department. I really liked how the orthopedic surgeons used to work. So then, initially I didn't get my post graduation because it took me almost 2 years. So me and my wife used to work in different hospitals for some time, and after 2 years, I got into orthopedics. After getting into orthopedics, it was completely different because from day one, I always wanted to do very well, or rather, excel really in orthopedics. So my effort during the post graduation time, I did a DORT from JSS Mysore and a DMB from Pushpagiri, Kerala. So it was a it was very, very exciting. I don't think there has been one day which has not been exciting as an orthopedic surgeon from the moment I've entered it. I had great teachers from my post graduation time, and uh, it was a it was really a dream to be an orthopedician, to become an orthopedic surgeon, and to continue to being an orthopedic surgeon, and it has been great.
So, all these teachers as mentors have really shaped up your career, isn't it?
Yes. So all my teachers. Okay. So for example, I could actually talk about one of my professors who left a lasting impression on me. One was Dr. Mrityunjaya. He was a professor in JSS Medical College. So my first shoulder dislocation, I seen the reduction by him. So great academician, Dr. Mrityunjaya, and very well knowledgeable, down to earth, a patient's doctor. You don't find many people like that now. So in JSS, I did find some people like that. Dr. Ravi Shankar, so who was the head of the department. Sir used to do the surgeries almost for free, and he showed us like how you can do any surgery at the minimum cost and to really benefit patients who are coming from very, very rural areas who can't even afford it. Compared to, I've seen both ends of the spectrum. Then I was talking about Dr. Mrityunjaya. So we were in the casualty, me and my co-PG, Dr. Manjuna. So there is a shoulder dislocation case. And so this patient was there, we got X-ray ready, and then by chance Dr. Mrityunjaya came in. So before that, we were actually thinking that normally what we do is we put a lot of effort in putting our shoulder back to its position. So we have to really push, and the patient's a little traumatized, how much of an anesthesia we give and all that. So Dr. Mrityunjaya came and said, like, guys, wait. And then what he did was, he made the patient lie down, asked him to just breathe. He slowly took the shoulder out and slowly put it back inside. It was like magic, pure magic. So that is definitely my first shoulder dislocation reduction which I've seen in my life. I've done that so many times. I've taught that to so many people. And there is another event really happened in JSS Hospital. I was in the final year postgraduate, maybe 2 years after I saw my first shoulder dislocation reduction. And there's another patient who came. And my senior, that means Dr. Mrityunjaya was a professor, there was a junior student, associate professors. They could not put a shoulder back to its position. They were like, okay, chalo, take the patient to operation theater. But, so they said, I told them, like, sir, give me a moment, let me try. I just could do it in a minute. And they were really surprised how I could do it. That's because of what he said is very important, because of the mentors. Your mentors actually shape you. And
So they either make you like a subject and make it look really easy, or they can really make it look really tough and not worth your time. So do you really think so these mentors are the incidents which really made you like or become a shoulder specialist?
uh, no. So after my post graduation, I wanted to do spine surgeries because I had a lot of exposure in spine. I wanted to do spine.
So it's not like from the very beginning. Why I'm asking you this is like in the beginning you wanted to do spine surgery, but now you're a shoulder surgeon. So a lot of youngsters nowadays, they're in a hurry. They have a very fixed mind. They want to do a particular kind of specialization. But as both of us are doctor, we know in our career itself guides to what we want to be, right? So sometimes the specialization what we choose may not be the one for us. There may be a different specialization completely for us. So shoulder was your ultimate calling for you. So you tried a lot of things. So you went into even pediatric surgery, spine surgery, but ultimately took up shoulder surgery. So doctor, how's your journey in shoulder surgery? Like there's a lot of doubts nowadays, even in my patient, when they have an injury, any kind of a shoulder or a sports injury, is it enough for them to meet or consult any orthopedic surgeon? Or, with your experience and skill, do you think meeting a specialized orthopedic surgeon in that particular condition would be much better? What do you think about it?
Absolutely agree, madam. Because, um, as you said, both of us, by now, we know that you can't be the master of everything.
Yes.
It is not possible to be a master of everything. And unless until you really focus on something, you can't be really good at it, keep on doing the same thing, read more about it, do more of academic research. So it really makes a difference when you go to a purely specialized, highly specialized person. That's going to make a difference.
So we are in an era of subspecialization. So it's not enough if an orthopedic surgeon says that, I'm an orthopedic surgeon, I will do everything under orthopedic. It's just not possible. And today, in an era when there is so much of advancement in technology, in so much of the techniques, there is so much of development, it's impossible for one orthopedic surgeon to do all kinds of surgeries, isn't it? So, what Dr. Ayyappan is saying is extremely important for one to consult the right kind of a doctor. For whatever condition you may have, it may be your shoulder, your wrist, your ankle, hip, but you need to consult a doctor who specializes in that particular field. A lot of times, my patient complain to me saying that they went to an orthopedic surgeon and their problem was not resolved. But you have to understand maybe you're consulting the wrong doctor itself. So it is your homework, it is your body, it is you are suffering with a problem. So you need to do your research before you go and consult a doctor. You need to know what is the doctor's training, what is the doctor specialized in, how many surgery he and she is doing in that particular condition, what are the results the doctor is able to give. So this is your job to meet a specific doctor, especially in cities like Bangalore, where there's no dearth of any specialization. One cannot say, I just went to orthopedic surgeon. You need to go to that particular specialist. So don't you think, doctor, this is particularly, a need of the hour. So it's just not sufficient to go and meet any orthopedic surgeon. We need to meet a particular specialized doctor in that particular field. It is a must today. So, doctor, I think after you finish your post graduation in India, you went on for a number of fellowship abroad. Definitely, India is good. There's a lot of the latest technology is happening. But do you think this kind of exposure, going out of country, doing multiple fellowship with different doctors, has it really helped you in your career? What do you think was the good and the bad? What was good here? What was good outside? Has this helped you be a better doctor? A lot of youngsters will definitely be helped with this kind of experience of yours. What do you think, doctor?
You're talking about the fellowships. So the thing is, in India at that time there was not many shoulder fellowships. There was actually, I would say, there's no shoulder fellowship during the time when I went. So it is all destiny, where you can try 100 different things, but it's a destiny which is actually going to take you to a right path, and you will find your destiny, and your destiny will find you. That will happen in time. So as you said, I tried pediatric orthopedics because I trained with a very good pediatric orthopedic surgeon, Dr. Varghese Chako, when I was doing my DNB. So I tried that, but then I realized I didn't really like it. Spine, I'm really happy that I didn't do the spine, because because
It was not for you,
it was not for me.
right?
Yeah.
Like they're excellent spine surgeons. So
Right.
we are not saying that spine.
Yeah, spine is a great field, but I don't think today, looking back, I would have enjoyed myself doing a spine surgery. So then I was lucky because during my post-graduation time, I must have sent out at least 100 mails all over the world to try for a fellowship. So by chance, by God's grace, I got one fellowship in South Korea. So in that is a life-changing event for me, and because I happened to meet my mentor, Professor Yu Yonsik. So he was the ex-president of the Shoulder and Elbow Society of Korea, and a nice human being. So the way he really took care of me during that 9 months time was really great. Means he would see he showed me what is the right mentorship. Means he would teach something when he's operating. He would then ask me to edit that video of that surgery. So I would have to edit at least 3-4 videos in the night. I didn't want to disappoint him. So what I would do is, even if I have to finish till the middle of the night or even early mornings, I would finish that video. Then I never knew how to publish a paper. We have read papers. That time, you must be remembering, madam, like that time in 2011, 10 and all that, when we were in post-graduation, we have read textbooks.
Exactly.
We never used to read papers.
So at least nowadays people are open to this idea of genuine papers. But I'm telling, like, something like 20 years back in my PG time, all of us were not even aware of paper. We used to just, some data we used to fake, and, we used to just write a paper for the sake of paper. But this genuine paper, I think you picked it up from Korea.
Yeah, Professor Yu Yonsik, so he would say that, okay, by next week I want this paper ready. I'm a guy who never wrote a paper in my life. I didn't know what a paper was. And the learning was, I had to fast learn it because I didn't want to disappoint my teacher.
Yes.
And by that timeline, I would have finished. So that made a huge difference. Okay, so how my perspective about researchers, treating patients is, and also exposure to the most advanced technology in the world at that time. And my boss used to name it, they do everything in shoulder surgery. So I had the right combination there. So when I came back, I was so highly trained so that I could do anything in shoulder. And that, and again, I was saying destiny because after that fellowship, I tried to learn knee replacement for some time. But I couldn't go into that channel because again and again shoulder was coming to me. Shoulder training.
But you did train in knee for good 6 months,
yes, absolutely.
Right? With one of the very famous surgeons in Bangalore.
Dr. Sanjay Paisar.
Right.
So again, a great person, great mentor. But I don't do any much of replacement now. I can do. I was doing. I can do. But the point is that uh, you are destined to do or be something. So that will keep coming to you.
That is very true. Yes, I know. I do agree. Destiny is one. But I always believe your hard work matters a lot. Now, what I'm seeing in today's younger generation, they're just not ready to do any hard work. They want everything on a platter. But in medical, we definitely know it doesn't work like that. A lot of people, a lot of my patient, family, friends, they think, oh, Dr. Owens is all set. And we know it's not like that. It's not like, everybody can do the best in medical also. So definitely destiny is there, but how like your exposure in Korea would have definitely matter. But it depends how you took that exposure, how you decided to take it forward. So definitely destiny is there, but one's hard work also matters a lot. Only few of them can really make it to the top. It's not possible for everybody.
Yes, I did.
So you did your shoulder fellowship in Korea, followed by I think you have gone for multiple places for other fellowships also. I think it's almost 14, 15 years of your practice in shoulder and sports injury. Do you think you know everything?
No.
So it is an ongoing process, isn't it? Especially for the young orthopedic surgeons who want to be a great shoulder and sports surgeon. They need to understand it's always an ongoing process. It's not like, we can feel happy and we have learned enough. We need to keep on updating ourselves, try to get the latest thing. And that makes a lot of difference and how we will be able to treat our patient. So it's always an ongoing process. So, doctor, would you like to share any of your experience in shoulder and sports injury, which had made a change? I know you, like, I've seen you, most of the time, you're very interested in inventing a lot of things. So, there is any experience of yours or anything which has made a difference you like to share with us?
So, madam, as you said, it's very important that the passion. I think, I remember the words of Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam, where he says that dream, dream. And once you dream, only then that will come to a reality.
Dream should keep you awake.
Yeah,
Not
yeah, dream should that is a.
It's not a dream and just sleep on it.
Yeah. So what he said is very true because I think any passion, any profession you choose, that dream is important. So thinking about that thing again and again and again. So, uh, uh, my wife, that is you, must have seen that. You have seen that, I used to dream up like 4 o'clock in the night. 5 o'clock in the early morning, I used to dream up, and I would say next day because I would be actually thinking about the surgery. I would be thinking that I can modify that surgery, how I could.
Not only dream, I have seen you operating in your dream. One time I see you, your hands are moving. I think, what are you doing?
No, wait.
I'm operating. Wait. Yeah, so that really is commendable.
That's thanks to you because putting up with you was very difficult for so many years. But the point is like you have to dream. So think like what else can. So when you do a surgery, you just don't do the surgery and come out and finish it. So you should. I feel that you should retrospect on a surgery for at least 30-40 minutes. See that what went well, what didn't go well, how you could improve on that, and next time you want to make it much better. It's very important to think like that. So that thinking process will definitely give us new answers and things. So another person who's really influenced me is Dr. Sugaya, Hiroyuki Sugaya from Japan. Out of the box surgeon, one of the top surgeons in the world, one of the fastest surgeons I've seen in shoulder. And his thought process has influenced me even today. I keep talking about it all the time because if there is a general concept that do only like this, he will think why not that way. So similarly, we started thinking. So we also started thinking about new papers. New papers means new concepts. So we have invented at least around 10 or 12 techniques in shoulder surgery, which have been luckily published in the top journals all over the world. Second is we have the latest one which we have done is there's a ligament, very important ligament in the shoulder, and we found where it should be actually attached. So the ligament is gone. You need to do a surgery to fix it back, but where it is attached. And then as I said, the last year 17 papers, which is like the best institution in the world would have such kind of papers. So that we are able to do with God's grace. I think that thinking process
has to be there.
the passion to do more, to do better.
So definitely the exposure you had. So in the very beginning itself, you had a mentor who oriented you to shoulder and specialization. That has helped you a lot. Now, Dr. Ayyappan, we have discussed a lot in general about your journey, about your fellowship, and the importance of specialization. Today, I'm seeing like, maybe 20, 25 years back, we used to hardly hear about shoulder issue. But today, even in my own practice, every second or third patient, I hear they have some or other shoulder problem. So there is a definite upsurge in shoulder problems, right? So do you also agree? And what would be the reason for this change or the shift in shoulder issue that we are seeing nowadays?
One is the kind of work which we people are doing nowadays. That means, especially in Bangalore, you see a lot of people who do the software work. That means work like 9, 10, 12 hours. It is, I don't think it is literally possible to, to work like that
Yes.
and get away without a back pain. So back pain translates into upper shoulder pain or upper back pain. So I would still see at least 60-70% patients I see are upper back pains who continuously sit somewhere, slouch, and they don't take care of their posture, ergonomics, and that is the main cause which we see more in Bangalore now.
So it is highly postural
Yes,
and profession related. Those are the kind of job in Bangalore, especially.
absolutely.
It's an IT world,
Yeah.
right? So is this like, any particular age group has been affected with the shoulder, like, younger?
Right. The shoulder as such is basically two group of patients. The younger patients come with mostly injuries. Like you have dislocation, they've fallen down somewhere. Those kind of things happen when you are younger. But that is like 20s to 30, 35-ish. But then 35-ish to 30 to 35-ish is when you see your average software engineer who has been working like 10, 12 hours, got a very bad posture, and it's got severe spasm in the neck muscles over here. They are, I feel that the software companies in Bangalore, if they really don't want to, if they want their people to work with them for a long period of time, they should really take care of their
In a
ergonomics.
healthy condition, yeah.
Ergonomics and posture is very important. They need to really pay attention to how their workers are really working. They need help there. So that is the next category you see. The main category which comes is the older patient group, like patient who are like 50, 60, 70 years. Elderly. So they come with either fractures or arthritis of the shoulder, or mainly rotator cuff tears or muscle tears in the shoulder. These are different categories of patients. Start from very young to goes up.
Every age.
Absolutely.
And is it one particular gender, whether male, female, are getting affected more?
When you actually look at lady patients, especially in the middle age and the older age group, if you look at their history, because it is very important when we exercise. If you ask most of the people around us, what exercise do you do? I go for a walk. Walk. That's all run.
Right.
But never the upper back exercises. So after around 40, 50 years, they start slouching. So this unless until the slouch is corrected and their shoulders really go back, eventually the friction starts. The friction process called impingement starts in the shoulder. And they eventually start ending up in pain and then muscle tears. So age, yes. Lady patient again, because most of the male patients are okay. They will be doing some kind of upper limb activity. They play some badminton, basketball, etc. But lady patients, after some time, they actually kind of give up. So I think it's very important.
So you're saying that this particular shoulder issue are more common in females. Yes, I think it's quite a bit to do with the lifestyle of the female. In the beginning period, they're not at all focused on themselves. They're always with family and other things. So they kind of neglect and ignore themselves. And also, I think it's quite a bit posture. Like, many women are so used to little bit of slouching, hiding their chest area. So this also causes the shoulder issue. Not only that, I have seen, even for the matter of fact, even my own mother or my family member have seen that some amount of shoulder pain they feel is okay. They kind of ignore it. But what they don't realize it, shoulder are moving your upper limb, your hands is the most important part. We cannot let it go. So, as rightly even you're saying from your experience, also you have seen that this shoulder problem is quite more common in the females.
Yes, because reduced upper limb exercises, slouch positions,
Muscle and strengthening, they're not focusing at all.
and the shoulder kind of tilts forward. That normally happens. We see it a lot.
Correct.
So, yeah.
It is common.
Yeah.
So, another very common thing I'm hearing nowadays is frozen shoulder. Earlier, hardly have heard about this term, but today, even in my practice, I hear a lot of people, are diagnosed with frozen shoulder. So, what is this frozen shoulder?
Frozen shoulder always been there. The thing is, now people are more aware. They start YouTubing, they start looking up and trying to find out what is the reason for it. Frozen shoulder just basically means the shoulder becomes stiff. That's it.
Okay.
If you have a stiff shoulder, it is frozen shoulder. Now, it can be divided into two categories. Primary means there's no particular reason. If you look at the data, you find that at least 60-70% patients with no particular reason, there's no reason at all. They're absolutely all right. Even I can have, or gentleman here can have, anybody can have this shoulder can become stiff. There are multiple theories behind it, but we don't actually know what is the possible actual cause of it. It is also found more in diabetic and thyroid patients. The incidence is more. That is one category. Second is like secondary. Secondary means I have a fall and I have an injury. Because of the pain, I don't move my shoulder much. The shoulder is inflamed. And if I don't move any joint, matter of fact, like the elbow joint, even my hand, if I don't move it for this finger in a plaster for 1 month, then I can't move it. That is secondary frozen shoulder. So now it is definitely treatable. There are different methods of treating it, and starting from steroid shots followed by physiotherapy. So we published that data. Our paper is already there, which 100 patients followed up for 2 years. We didn't have to operate on any patient. That means the results are excellent with a single steroid shot with continuous physiotherapy. Physiotherapy is the key. How much ever you do a shot is for the pain reduction.
Shot you're meaning is steroid injection, right? That's what you mean.
Steroid injection. You give a steroid injection and meticulous therapy for 1.5 months, the patients will be fine. Very in our practice, not I would say like in the last 5 years, only 2 patients required surgery for frozen shoulder. So that is actually really good results. Then secondary frozen shoulder, if you have a muscle tear or something like that,
the cause has to be treated. So if I can sum it up, frozen shoulder is basically stiffness of the shoulder joint. So as you said, it could be primary, wherein the cause is not known, or secondary, that is due to any kind of a trauma, that particular shoulder is not moved. So need not be that the trauma is in the joint. It could be any other trauma, like the patient could be bedridden or elbow injuries. Due to some reason, they are not able to move the shoulder. So that is frozen shoulder. So you're saying more than 99.9% of the cases, the treatment is non-surgical. Surgery is not needed. So this is a big relief to a lot of people. I know for a fact that lot of people ignore even going and meeting an orthopedic surgeon in the fear of surgery. So it's a big relief to them coming from an expert like you who says that frozen shoulder can be treated in majority of the cases without any surgery. So basically timely intervention and if needed maybe a steroid shot.
The treatment is in different steps.
Exactly.
So it is like steroid injection followed by rehab, physiotherapy, no response, then you operate. So operate means it is not even a big surgery. Put a camera in it, just a tight ligament, you just release it. And immediately you get your movement back. Right. So it is definitely treatable and the treatment is in steps of escalation.
And as you're also insisting, the right kind of physiotherapy is very important. It's just, and even a committed physiotherapy from your end. So it's just not enough if you're going to meet some physiotherapist. That particular physiotherapist has to be specialized in shoulder physiotherapy. Today in Bangalore, at least there are, 4 to 5 physiotherapy clinics in every road. So every physiotherapist will not be able to handle a frozen shoulder. But when done in a proper way, frozen shoulder can be easily treated without any surgery. Why I'm asking and telling you this is recently one of my friend on Facebook was venting out that she's not able to take the pain and the issue with her frozen shoulder. She's so very upset that she's venting on her Facebook. So even though we are doctors, many a times we are also not aware whom to consult and who would be the right kind of a doctor. But that's why I would like to insist here. Frozen shoulder can be very debilitating. It can really hamper your life. It can really mess up your life. But with the right kind of treatment, with the right kind of consultation with the right doctor, this can definitely be treated and more than near total. Doctors say not even near total regain of function is possible. Since you spoke about steroid, I know for a fact, even in my practice, I give a lot of steroid injection for different condition, but patients are super scared. I don't know what happens, but the moment we say steroid, patient gets super scared.
The fear factor is unknown, man.
Correct. Definitely, I understand this, but since we are in the medical field, for a steroid, we know it's not a big deal. But I know the fear the patient faces also. I know from where they come. It has been put in the brains from very young age that steroids are bad. You can get addicted to steroid, and steroid can cause lot of harm. So that is what troubles them. But since if I can know from an expert that steroid injection for a frozen shoulder, where are you going? And if there are any complications due to steroid injection, can you please highlight on this?
Yeah. So I trained in on all the continents, and I've seen practice of different surgeons. And I find that Indian patients, we are the most apprehensive. Whenever I advise a shot, say that doctor should say, okay, is there any problem? Okay, will I put on weight? Is there any hormonal changes? Will I fall sick? They have 100% of people are extremely scared. I feel really sad for patients sometimes because as you said, the social, because they would have talked to somebody and they would have heard, they would have heard something somewhere. Exactly. And they would have really scared them. The moment you say steroid, but I've seen in my mentor's practice, Dr. Sugai's practice in Japan, where this shot is every third patient would be actually given a shot.
But I think the awareness among the people might be different.
Yes. So here, okay, so your question was, is a steroid safe?
Yes.
Yeah. So now, steroid is basically used for reduction of the inflammation.
Right.
There are different types of steroids, injectable steroids also. So it depends upon the duration of action. So in shoulder practice, we use, in my practice, I use injection beta-methasone. So it is a long-acting steroid, acts for around 8 days. That is the action of this particular steroid. And why is it chosen? I have gone through the literature, that means scientific evidence of all the steroids. Compared to that, I picked up beta-methasone because it acts for enough duration.
Correct.
It will not, it is not acting for like 2 months or 3 months or something, when it's going to really affect your system and cause you hormonal imbalances and all that. There could be a small spike when we look at the data of it. If the patient is a diabetic patient, there is a small spike in that sugar levels for 1 to 2 days and then it comes back to normal.
Right.
Then it is given localized in the shoulder. So systemic side effects are very, 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 very nil, or you can say very minimal. And then I would say that so it is almost safe.
Safe. It's completely safe.
And then one problem, if you ask me what are the complications of the steroid shot, I would say that if it is given into a tendon or a muscle, so it can cause a muscle rupture. That's why it is, as you said, it's important. If you could, in my practice, I have seen patients who have been treated by maybe some other surgeons with the steroid shot, no response. It is important to know where to give it.
Exactly.
So you coming to a shoulder specialist is important because even if I close my eyes, I can actually palpate and that means feel everything in the shoulder. Because I operate on the shoulder,
Yes.
so my my knowledge about the shoulder would be much better than somebody else. So I know where the particular structure is. So giving into the right places. So if you look at the steroid, you have to give it in at least 2-3 places because patient has inflammation in 3 places. Right. Some doctors would give it in one shot somewhere, which is not even near your affected area. So giving the right place, the right injection, which is the correct choice of injection, and would avoid any of the complication like a muscle injury. Right.
So what you're saying is steroid is completely safe, but in the right hand for the right indication and in the right place. So what you're saying is whatever happens, the amount of steroid dose you're using cannot cause a systemic side effect. That means one cannot bloat, one cannot put on weight. So whatever happens due to whatever reason, the side effect would be limited to that particular joint. Suppose you have injected in right shoulder, so if complication will happen, it will be limited to that particular joint. So a very important point to insist, a highlight here is steroid is not life threatening. A lot of time patients are scared if they take steroid, something may happen to them. But steroids are not life threatening. So the dose and what purpose we are using steroid would make the difference. So we cannot say blanket way, ki a particular drug is bad or good. Now, for example, as we know, anesthetists are using opioids, morphine. But that doesn't mean morphine in that particular case is bad or they will get addicted to it. So basically, any drug, when given for the right indication, in the right dose, and by the right doctor, is not harmful.
This question. I had to answer this question at least to every week. I have to answer at least this question to 100 people. 100 people I have to talk to. So I had to do so much of talking that I put up a YouTube video outside saying that steroid efficacy of steroid or no complication of steroid. Correct?
So I really understand for us doctors, it can be really frustrating because we are trying to give a simple solution, steroid, but the patient and the fear is really too much. For even in my practice recently, one of my patient for his keloid, I had to give a steroid injection, but his grandmother was completely against it. So the dosage I was using is just 3 or 4 mg. If I have to tell about dosage, even steroid up to 1 mg per kg body weight is a therapeutic dose. It has completely harmless. But the fear about steroid is very true and it exists. So a lot of times I talk to my patient, or their relatives, my friends, ki what is that, but the fear is true about steroids.
Sometimes you really feel sad because the fear is so much that even if you talk for 20 minutes, the patient is so scared. Then I leave the choice to the patient. They're like, this is my advice. But you take a call. And then I find they would come back after suffering for 2 to 3 months. You feel really sad. Like, I then had to go through it. But sometimes you can't, in spite of even 15-20 minutes, you can't take the fear out of them.
So, doctor, before giving a steroid injection, is there any test or diagnosis, or I would say, is there any contraindication that in this particular condition you cannot give a steroid injection? What would that be?
One is I want the sugars under control. I would like to have my fasting sugar less than 110 for at least a week. So that means they're getting at least HbA1c is not enough, because that is a 3 months thing. So I want the fasting sugar for 1 week and then I give it. Then the second is you should not give it when there's a muscle tear. Yes. So if there's a muscle tear, if you give a steroid shot, the chance of muscle rupture is yeah. So these are 2 things which you have.
Has to be done.
Right.
So if you don't do this, you can get into complications. Right?
So after the steroid injection, what is your protocol? What do the patient have to do after a steroid injection?
So they have to rest their shoulder for 2 days, 24 to 48
For 48 hours, they need to rest.
That means they can move around, but the hand has to be just down.
No bed rest.
No
Only
bed
for
rest.
the joint which you have injected.
Shoulder rest.
Rest, okay.
And then the most important thing after that is the physiotherapy. You said a very valid point, man, that every physiotherapist is not a shoulder therapist.
Yes.
You need to go to the right therapist who knows the right protocol. So it is patients will tell me like, doctor, can I do this therapy near my home? I said you can, but then you might not get the results.
Yes.
Because therapists, it's like
everybody is not trained in it.
An MBBS doctor is not a plastic surgeon.
Yes.
So use even a small suturing which you do will be 1,000 times different from a MBBS doctor.
Now,
Earlier era, we used to see a MBBS doctor was capable of doing everything. He or she would handle everything. But today, we know very well after MBBS, we are not capable of handling everything. So, similarly, even in a physiotherapy or a therapist, they need to be trained in that particular field. With due respect to all therapists, not like, we are trying to say some therapists are good and some are not. It's not that. But definitely the exposure matters. So some physiotherapists may be really good in spine physiotherapy, neurological physiotherapy, or a bedridden. There are different types. But in certain areas like shoulder, we need a physiotherapist or a therapist who is highly trained in that particular area. So this is a very, very important thing that one needs to go to a specialized therapist to get the best results.
Shoulder rehab, so at least 2 hours every day for 2 months, 1.5 to 2 months. Patient got a lot of stiffness. For example, just yesterday I met a patient of mine, 2 weeks. She's recovered completely. But some patients who have lot more tightness will take more time, like 1.5 to 2 months. If no response in 2 months, then we advise something called as an arthroscopic keyhole surgery, capsular release.
So, doctor, I know, but you know, spending. I know why patients feel very scared, and also the 2 hours every day is very difficult. And I myself have got physiotherapy done for multiple, like I had plantar fasciitis. I know for a fact physiotherapy is very painful experience. But until unless we cross this, pain or whatever it takes, even the commitment, there's no other way out of it. So the commitment part is definitely from the patient side. There's no shortcut to this. If you want result, if you want the disease to improve, or if you want the condition to resolve, we have to commit to whatever it takes. There's no point. A lot of time patient keep complaining that they did, but they're not getting the result. But not doing enough, not being complete, going for the entire therapy again becomes useless. So recovery, there's no point saying they didn't get recovery, isn't it? They need to do the physiotherapy part. Now, recovery, I think, as even doctor is saying, only 25% is in the doctor's hand. Rest is in the patient. Not even, so doctor is saying it's not even 25%. So 5% is only the doctor's role. 95% it is what the patient does and how well the patient undergoes physiotherapy.